This video is going to be on factoring polynomials in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c when a is equal to 1. Now some of the rules, this is a trinomial, or it's also called a quadratic equation. And the rules are that the first term can't be negative. If that's the case, then you're going to have to factor out a negative value. And also the value has to be 1. So this a value actually is 1. So it really will just be like x squared. You have to make sure the polynomial is in standard form. So standard form is the degree is from largest to smallest. And you have to also check to see if you can factor out a GCF. So if you can do that, you're going to do that first. So when I set up my X puzzle, it's always your number, your C value is on top. So that's my last one. So my C value is 24. And my b value is 11. So you have to ask yourself what two numbers multiply to get you 24 and add up to 11. And it has to be a positive 24 and a positive 11. So the factors I would use is 8 and 3, because 8 times 3 is going to multiply to get you a positive 24, and 8 plus 3 is going to give you 11. So you're going to write your two binomials. So your x is going to go first, and then it's going to be plus 8. Now, it doesn't matter the order that you put this in, and it would be x plus 3. So I have x plus 8 and x plus 3. Now, for me to check this, I could use the FOIL method. So it would be x times x, which is x squared. X times 3 would be plus 3x. 8 times x would be plus 8x. And 8 times 3 would be plus 24. If you combine like terms in the middle, you would get x squared plus 11x plus 24, which goes back to the original equation. So your final answer is actually the x plus 8 times x plus 3, that binomial. Now, in the next one, you're going to put the c value on top, so it's a positive 35. And it's going to be a negative 12 on the bottom. So it's what two numbers multiply to get you 35 and add up to negative 12. And that's going to be negative 5 times a negative 7, which gives you that positive 35. And a negative 5 plus a negative 7 is going to give you that negative 12. So my answer is going to be n minus 5 and n minus 7. That's going to be my final answer. So my next one, I'm using my X puzzle. I'm going to put negative 26 on top. So what two factors multiply to get you negative 26 and add up to negative 11? So two factors of 26 would be 13 and 2. So it's going to be a positive 2 and a negative 13, because 2 times negative 13 gives you that negative 26. And 2 plus a negative 13 gives you that negative 11. So it's going to be m plus 2 and m minus 13. And that would be my factored binomials. Now this one, I have the 24 on top. So what two numbers multiply to get you 24 and add up to negative 4? Well, I'm going to go through my factors of 24. I have 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. Okay, so here's my factors. Well, I know I need two negative values, because I either need two positives or two negatives. And I probably need two negatives. So if I have a negative 1 and a times a negative 20, or a negative 1 plus a negative 24, that would not give me negative 4. If I have negative 2 plus a negative 12, that would not give me a negative 4. A negative 3 plus a negative 8, that would not give me a negative 4. And a negative 4 plus a negative 6 would not give me negative 4. So this is what's called prime. And that means that it cannot be factored. So there's no factors that multiply to get you 24 and add up to negative 4. That's just not the case. Now with this one, you always want to look to see, kind of your first question is it in standard form? Can I factor out a GCF? In this case, you can factor out 5. That's the greatest common factor between these values. So I'm going to put that 5 on the outside. And then it's going to be 5 times what gives you 5v squared, and that's going to be v squared. 5 times what gives you negative 30v, so it's going to be negative 6v. 5 times what gives you a positive 40, that's going to be plus 8. So I want to say what two factors multiply to get me 8 and add up to negative 6. That's going to be negative 4 times a negative 2, which is a negative 8, or a positive 8. A negative 4 plus a negative 2 is a negative 6. So I'm going to write my two binomials. So I have v minus 4 and v minus 2. But I can't forget about that GCF because that is what I factored out. So this would be my final answer. So this is considered factoring, and then this is considered factoring. So they both have to be included. My last example, I need to ask myself, is it in standard form? It is, because it goes 4, 3, 2 are my degrees. I have to make sure this is a positive value, and I have to make sure I can, if I want to factor out the GCF. In this case, I'm going to have to factor out my GCF of a negative 3, which I have a negative 3. So negative 3 times what gives me x to the 4th? That's just going to be x to the 4th. Negative 3 times what gives me 39, and that's going to be a negative 13 x to the 3rd power. And then a negative 3 times what gives me a negative 120. That's going to be a positive 40 x squared. I also notice that I can factor out an x squared. So I have x squared minus 13x plus 40. So I'm going to see if I can factor this more. So I have what two numbers can multiply to 40 and add up to negative 13. In this case, that would be a negative 8 and a negative 5. So negative 8 times negative 5 gives me that positive 30. A negative 8 plus a negative 5 gives me that negative 13. So my answer, I have my two binomials. I have x minus 8 and x minus 5. But that's not my final answer because I have to include my GCF. So I have a negative 3x squared. And that would be my answer.